Pro-Russian separatist and Ukrainian government forces were locked in intense fighting in eastern Ukraine today. The rebels tried to organize their forces, but said they were outnumbered and outgunned. A top rebel commander begged Russia for help. In London, NATO chief Anders Fogh Rasmussen said Russia has resumed a military buildup along the border.
We call on Russia to stop the flow of weapons and equipment from Russia to separatist groups in eastern Ukraine. We call on Russia to stop the support for pro-Russian armed gangs in eastern Ukraine.
Зушка еще раз по баррикаде.
Форман пошел!
Пусть не работает по училищу. Мы зачистим училище, займемся банком. Да, они сейчас будут работать по банку, правильно?
A Russian checkpoint on the border with Ukraine has come under shelling. As a result, a border guard has been injured with shrapnel. The attack occurred as self-defense forces in eastern Ukraine clashed with the army. The military is said to have used mortar fire, which then hit the checkpoint. It happened when refugees were crossing the border, as we heard from a witness.
I wanted to help people who are crossing from Ukraine, so I went to the border to offer my assistance. There were lots of children in the refugee camp and I brought them sweets to cheer them up. I heard the gunfire as I was coming up to the border. People were screaming and running. There were several gunshots. It was very scary to see women and children crying. I left for some time and when I came back, I saw the checkpoint was on fire.
Okay, let's get the very latest details on this from RT's Roman Kosev. Roman, what more can you tell us about this development?
That's right. Well, the border guard who was injured, he's apparently in a very severe state, being cared for at the moment. Meanwhile, Moscow has demanded an explanation and investigation from the authorities in Kiev over the shelling of the Russian border point overnight. Meanwhile, the Kiev Defense Ministry denies any such thing has ever taken place, but we have the Russian border guard representative who gave us this information.
Когда начался этот кошмарный обстрел,
we were inside the building when this horrific shelling began. We started moving everyone at the checkpoint to safety. One of the officers suffered a head injury. At the time of the incident, around 200 refugees were crossing the border.
Also, Russian border control service that said that a bus with 36 children, refugees, was shot at overnight as well. Now all these children are safe and sound on the Russian territory in the Rostov region in one of the refugee camps. Also, on Friday night, in a separate incident, a Ukrainian checkpoint, border control point, was shelled as well. As the result, 2 servicemen had been injured and 80 soldiers have crossed the border into Russia, where they were cared for, and the injured people were also cared for there as well. Meanwhile, Russia is now strengthening its border along with Ukraine.
Okay, thank you to our correspondent Roman Kosev reporting live for us from Ukraine.
President Vladimir Putin is ordering troops in central Russia to go on full combat readiness. The surprise drills are not close to the border with Ukraine, and we should add NATO has just concluded exercises in 3 Baltic states as well as in the Baltic Sea. CCTV's Jessica Gallagher has more from Moscow.
Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu says the alert includes the central Volga region and the Ural Mountains. In a statement, the Kremlin says some 65,000 troops will be involved in the exercises. The announcement comes as Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko announced a week-long ceasefire intended to give pro-Russian separatists the opportunity to lay down their weapons and or leave Ukraine. Pavel Gubarov is the self-appointed governor of the self-proclaimed People's Republic of Donetsk. Rebels in the region say residents voted to secede from Ukraine on May 11th. Gubarov says the ceasefire is a sham.
There is no ceasefire. The plan Poroshenko is talking about is fake. Ukrainian forces are either not under his control or he's a liar.
Poroshenko maintained that there is a ceasefire in effect, but Kiev has the right to protect itself.
If there is a violation, our armed forces and National Guard have the right to open fire and respond.
The U.S. supports Poroshenko's plan, saying Kiev will continue to do what's necessary to secure its border with Ukraine while giving rebels the opportunity to abide. Moscow has condemned the ceasefire, calling it an ultimatum. Vitaly Churkin is Russia's ambassador to the United Nations.
It is premature to talk about our support for President Poroshenko's initiative, at least for the reason that we haven't seen it yet.
In a statement, the Kremlin said it would carefully review the proposal by Poroshenko, but criticized it because it did not include talks with rebels, maintaining a major element is missing: negotiations. Russia also said the shelling of one of its checkpoints on the border with Ukraine cast doubt on the peace plan, calling it a provocation and an aggressive act. Kiev says it was responding to pro-Russian separatists. The violence in Ukraine has forced some 30,000 residents from their homes. Jessica Gallagher, CCTV News, Moscow.
A fleet of new Russian Sukhoi 34 twin-seat fighter jets arrived at an airbase in southern Russia, not far from the Ukrainian border. Pilot Sergei Shturbabin says the new jets replace the older Su-24M model and give the military more flexibility regarding combat missions.
The Su-34 has superior maneuverability, a maximum altitude of 15,000 meters, and a distance range of 7,000 kilometers. It also is capable of hitting targets with maximum precision from different kinds of maneuvers under any weather conditions, day or night.
This airbase in Russia's Rostov region isn't far from the site of some of the fiercest fighting between Ukrainian forces and pro-Russian separatists. The buildup comes on the heels of a late-night phone call between Ukraine's President Petro Poroshenko and Russia's Vladimir Putin regarding a possible ceasefire. It dissolved almost instantly, as pro-Russian rebels accused Kiev of violating it, and Moscow's top diplomat, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, went a step further.
I have also heard about an option that this temporary ceasefire is needed to allow so-called separatists to leave Ukrainian territory. Well, this is probably close to ethnic cleansing. If the Russian-speaking ethnic Russian population is invited to leave the country because the authorities do not want to take note of their lawful demands.